Hey there guys, Jack Dallas here. As you can see, I just kind of have one article up for a quick video analysis today. Now, you might have noticed that this article was from December 3rd of this year, but been a little bit busy this week, been a little bit slow with things on the media end, so I just kind of wanted to get back into the swing of things with something simple. Now, I know you guys have seen a lot of videos like this from me, but I just want to kind of continue to do video analysis of pieces of media targeted at Western audiences, which I feel are sort of just full of propaganda throughout. And this article by Lucian Kim out of Reuters, I felt, was just full of double standards in the analysis of Russia in the international, sort of political landscape versus how America and the West is viewed. Now, this article was discussing sort of just like a speech that Putin made, sort of an equivalent of like a State of the Union speech in Russia. And it's just full of, in my opinion, what I would call both derogatory language and just an unbelievable amount of bias. So if I come down here, if I start right here, in his last address to the nation was all about Russia's glorious annexation of Crimea and its never-ending struggle against American hegemony, so on and so forth. Then coming down here, from Putin's point of view, the dismemberment of Ukraine is no longer a priority. Riven by infighting and increasingly unpopular, the pro-Western government in Kiev may self-destruct all on its own. Now, let's stop right there, guys. From the beginning, using this phrase, dismemberment of Ukraine, that's pretty obvious. That's pretty egregious propaganda because right there, it's sort of just putting out this image of, Putin coming in and wrecking the country of Ukraine as though it were, America in the Middle East. Maybe that would be a better example, sort of just redrawing borders. There's no mention here whatsoever of the fact that it was first a coup in Kiev, which led to Crimea deciding to make itself independent. They had a vote, and I realize that a lot of people are going to stand there and say, oh, well, there was a lot of pressure. Those people, they would have had to vote to be with Russia. They felt pressure, this, that, the other thing. And it's interesting to me that the same people that say that don't seem to think it's pertinent to mention that maybe those same people who are almost all Russian in origin in the Crimea region don't want to be under that new Kiev government and don't want to be under the thumb of the US and the West and the international banks and all that stuff. So what it comes down to is the fact that you have a double standard in the sense that they're saying that Putin is dismembering that country when it was the people of that sector that wanted to join Russia in the first place. And let's not forget that it was a Western-backed and Western-funded coup that led to Crimea being annexed. It was not just like Russia came in and did it for no reason whatsoever. So this is just full of propaganda. And then going on to say, the increasingly unpopular pro-Western government in Kiev is may self-destruct. Well, first of all, no kidding. We put those people in. They're not a legitimate government whatsoever. And the people there don't want them. It was a coup that we engineered for our own political gain. So is it any surprise that these people are unpopular, and yet we have to sit back and be told that it's Putin doing the dismembering? Why not accuse the West? They're the ones that started the whole conflict there in the first place. So moving on, talking about poking the Americans in the eye, Putin saying, we know why that happened. He's talking about, ISIS and everything kind of getting out of control. We know who wanted to replace objectionable regimes, brutally imposing their own rules. And then this part talking about, how NATO invited Montenegro to join, the conflict and all this stuff. And they're trying to accuse Putin right here of having a double standard. And what's interesting is, right here, again, no follow-up on this quote. My question to you, Lucian Kim, is, do you know that the Americans and the Western countries helped fund and create and train yada 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 ISIS and all those different groups, all these disparate regimes causing all of the terrorism and everything going on over there, all the death and destruction? I mean, he makes a passing reference to it and doesn't elaborate on it at all. And my question is, what part of what Putin is saying here is wrong? The West did fund ISIS. The West did train ISIS. The West did contribute to ISIS's rise in the Middle East and their success in Iraq and Syria. There's nothing here which is inaccurate. And yet down here, he's essentially being accused of, having a double standard for America versus Russia in the international landscape. Now, going on, they start to talk about how Putin's calling out Turkey for shooting down the plane. the Russian fighter jet, and they're saying how he didn't really call Islamic State the terrorists, so a casual listener could have been excused for concluding that the real enemy is Turkey. Well, let me ask you a question, guys. If a country shoots down one of your fighter jets, do you consider them an enemy or an ally? Now, I'm not saying that Russia is about to necessarily go to war with Turkey. I'm not saying they're about to declare them open enemies, but what Turkey did by shooting down that plane was ridiculously egregious. It was just unbelievable. I mean, I think I've explained, all the reasons for that in the past, but it's just such a ridiculous excuse for violence. It doesn't make any sense whatsoever. And the fact that Putin is being essentially nailed to a cross just for calling Turkey out for something that they did, while we ignore the fact that Turkey shot down an allied fighter jet and executed most of the pilots, is absolutely ridiculous. That is the double standard, not what Putin is saying. So they're talking about, Erdogan and stuff going on down here, and Putin is one of the only guys who's able to come out and kind of talk about the fact that oil is going on, an oil trade with ISIS. That's how they're funding a lot of their stuff, and Turkey is involved, and you can see him calling them out here. And what's interesting is people have been reporting for years about Islamic State successfully being able to penetrate the oil market and be able to not only take control of oil fields, but successfully sell that oil and profit off of it, which is huge. And it's pretty much obvious to anybody who looks at that for even half a second that you need to have international governments involved in your organization in order to pull that off. The oil trade is not something which happens on what I guess you would call a ground level. It's a very, intricate trade, and you definitely have to have state governments involved. So we know that somebody is helping them pull it off. And the fact that Putin is essentially being accused of just, firing from the hip when it's quite obvious what's going on, and he's not the first person to accuse Turkey or the West of this. Once again, this is the double standard. So I just wanted to, kind of point out a couple of these things, guys, and just sort of, put it out there more to show you guys like what's going on in the media here in America and how things are being framed. I mean, I'm not trying to really defend Putin. I have a lot of issues that I kind of take with him as well. But this is the stuff that leads to war, and this is the stuff that our country, America, reads every morning and then decides, we have no choice. We have to enter a conflict. And what we have to do is start realizing that our opinions are being framed for us ahead of time, and that the reactions that they want to get are essentially the ones that they sort of pre-stage us to have. So what I want people to do is to read articles like this with an open mind and to not just accept them. And I think if you kind of go into it purposely thinking, okay, I really want to analyze this and I really want to see, does this guy have an axe to grind or is this objective journalism? If you kind of just stop for a second and really read articles with a lot of mindfulness, I really think that you'll start to see this stuff. Even going on down here, as Putin droned on to the second half hour of his speech, state-run Channel 1, talking about people basically falling asleep. I mean, we've seen a million videos out there, guys, not to be doing any muckraking here, but we've seen a lot of videos where, American officials are going on and on and on, and everybody's falling asleep. But they talk about state-run Channel 1, and you always hear about this with Russia. You always hear about the state-run media and how the state propaganda, and let's be honest, guys, what's CNN? What's NBC? What's Fox? We all pretend that these guys have a bias of left and right, but at the end of the day, that's a distraction. Their real bias is for America. All those channels might as well be state-run, and they all need state approval via licensing, via everything that they need to operate. So at the end of the day, they still have to go through the filter of the state. They might as well be state-run. And even if anybody wants to argue with that, tell me one channel out there that isn't peddling the American front line. Okay, it's American foreign policy that's being served up for us every single night on our news station. Yet this guy, Lucian Kim, has the gall to refer to, Russia's news as state-run as though it's something different from the United States. And at the same time, we've got all this stuff going on. Like I said, they're talking about Putin and everybody's falling asleep. And it's like, what about our politicians? We've got Obama, who half the time doesn't even get up there to talk about anything unless it's this stupid, terrorist attack or whatever that happened in San Bernardino, where he just tries to grab it for political opportunity and, pass gun control measure once again. At the end of the day, I just think that these people are pointing out a double standard, which is so unbelievably obvious, and it's so obviously false, that it takes hardly any analysis to see it. And I just wanted to point this out for you guys and kind of see what you have to say about it. So definitely shoot me an email, throw some comments out there, and let's talk some more about how the media in America is maybe its own state-run apparatus. All right, guys, have a good week.